Chapter 25, Bill Lecture. Microbial ecology, pretty much what this does, it's the study of the microbes in its own natural habitat. And that's pretty much what the microbial ecology is. Nutrients recycling. So pretty much what this does, it recycles nutrients and elements. And pretty much what happens is it will lead to long-term sustenance of the nutrients of the biosphere. The reason that is because the finite supply of the nutrients is pretty much like a life-blocking type of building blocks. Biochemical cycles. Pretty much what this does, it takes the essential needs of the biochemical cycles, the elements of it, and what it's going to happen is like the carbon of it, the nitrogen, the sulfur, and oxygen, they're pretty much going to cycle through the biochemical and the geological chemical parts of this. So it's pretty much like one big old cycle of the biological and geological nutrients of this. Carbon cycle. Pretty much with carbon cycle, this is like the fundamental portion of this. So when you think of a carbon, the fundamental part is the atom. And how the atom is, it's in all of the biomolecules. And what happens with that is like the atoms in there account for at least half of the dry weight of the carbon cycle of the biomass. So what happens is the energy will pass through, and when the energy transfers, it will transfer into the biosphere rather than the other elements. And what that means is the covenant starting point from which traces of the movement will become of the carbon. So what happens with that is with the carbon dioxide of the carbon cycle will occupy the central part or the central position of a cycle. And it's going to represent a large common pull of the carbon cycle. What the carbon cycle is going to continue to build like organic carbons, photosynthesis, sunlight. It's just it, and then the fossil fuels of it. Pretty much what the nitrogen cycle does, it's more than just a cycle. The reason that is because the way that it involves diversity of different things. Like there's a specialty type of microbe that this observes, and what it does, it helps maintain like the flow of the nitrogen cycle. And what happens is the flow of it is going to maintain the nitrogen cycle. A lot of ways it actually will, a lot of ways actually more than others of the nitrogen cycle. The nitrogen web, this is due to pretty much the array of reaction that will occur. The nitrogen cycle will pretty much include like 4 different basic types of things. You have one of the basic types would be like the reaction, and then you have like the nitrogen fixations, and then the modifications, and then you'll have like nitrifications and dispercations as well in this type of nitrogen cycle. Now, the biotechnology, this is pretty much an ancient history type of thing. And this pretty much can go all the way back to like 6,000 years ago. So what happens is those who first observe like humans actually humans observe that if you leave grape juice unattended, it will pretty much eventually will turn like into wine because of how it pollutes everything. It would pretty much turn into wine. And pretty much what happens on that is like you can take like bread dough and the yeast of the bread dough or the bacteria will eventually cause like the bread dough to rise. When you take the bread dough of the yeast, pretty much today's biotechnology people will include a recombinant of like DNA type of process, and that will pretty much help boost like the methods of technology is through people's like DNA or animal DNAs. Just different types of DNAs is going to boost the methods of the technology of today's society. With water treatment, most of our drinking water, they come from like rivers or springs. Like you'll go like in the woods and you get like spring water, and then aquifers. A lot of the cities will treat the waters before they are produced to like consumers. When you have like a deep well, what happens with that is it's pretty much clean. There's not like a lot of contamination in it, and it's free of different types of like contamination. You don't have to worry about that as much. This requires like less treatment. Now, the ones that have surface and they're laden with waste, those are the ones that we have to be more cautious about. So like water sewage and stuff like that, that is another one that we'd have to like make sure it doesn't cross-contaminate into our waters, like in the city as well. Now, with bread making, there are 3 different types of functions through like the microorganisms. Your first one's going to be like the lignin. The second one pretty much is going to be like the when you give it like flavor or cause like a smell. And then like the third is pretty much like the conditioning part of it. And that's what makes it workable. So the leavening part of the bread making process, it's pretty much like it releases like a type of gas to produce the dough, and it's like a spongy product of like the bread. If you do not do this step, majority of like the dough will be like dense, hard, flat, and it's not going to be easy to work with. The most common variable that is used to prepare is like the baker's yeast. It just depends on the yeast of bakers that's going to be used in this type of experiment when making bread. And also, pretty much depends on the type of bread that you're using as well whenever you're making the type of bread. Now, providing flavor and odor. You can use different types of flavoring and it's going to give you different types of taste and different types of smell. This is going to require sorts like you can use like sugar, such as maltose or glucose in this. The fermentation is pretty much only carbon dioxide and water rather than alcohol. If you have like air in the dough, it's going to break down the flour protein of the situation. Yeast and bacteria can give a unique type of flavor, but it just depends on what yeast and what bacteria that the person is culturally like mixing in order for the process to work. So there's good bacteria, there's good yeast. It just depends on which one you use. With One Health, this is pretty much a concept that captures like the human health and animal health. And it's like the nature of the microbes. And what happens is this is going to like build like an environment-based pore of animals and the humans. So One Health pretty much is going to like determine like if you have different like infections, cancerous materials, or just different types of consumptions within your health of yourself or an animal. The spillover event within the HIV, this occurred back in like the 1900s. It pretty much can spread quickly and can be very deadly because of like the infections that is caused by it, and the symptoms and signs. And it's pretty much reactivated from when it first started in the 1900s. The different types of like disease carried by mosquitoes are pretty much expected to affect like the host. So if you get by mosquito and it has like a different type like infection, then it can be transferred to you through the transmission, the way that it goes like inside your body. It's more like in the northern latitude part that we will see that. I mean, yes, we get bit by mosquitoes all the time, but a lot of it, like the northern part, is where they're the most mosquitoes are, I guess. The reason that is because the northern latitude has like warmer climates, and a lot of times the mosquitoes love warmer climates rather than cold. So like our climate, we have like cold climates, we have like warm climates, and then you have like the mid-cold where it's like spring and stuff. But up there, there's more like warmer climates that the mosquitoes attract to. With the COVID-19 pandemic, this was pretty much based on warming climates as well. It's pretty much like an alarming situation, combination threats to human health. So the COVID-19 is pretty much, it could be very deadly and it can hurt us as humans as well.